Hi guys, I'm Uni, coach of the Charming Chandelures,
And I'm Parm, co-coach of the Charming Chandeliers.
and our secret,
We're just charming.
and we're here to bring you guys the week 3 Pickems.
Okay then, let's get into it.
So our first match, we have the Oshawa Oshawotts against the Williamsburg Whimsicots.
Yeah, so looking at it right away, I really like that Araquanid. I think having sticky webs up will give him an advantage with speed control. Because you see the Raichu-Alola, the Victini, these are really powerful threats that he doesn't have many answers to, especially that Raichu-Alola. The only thing I can see that could reliably take a hit from it is probably the Golem or the Miltank. Miltank probably because it has a milk drink.
I think
But
Gudra could also probably take a hit from it.
Kudra, absolutely, but I don't think it wants to take a hit. That's the thing.
No, that's fair. That's absolutely
It
fair.
isn't.
Gudra does not want to be taking hits where it doesn't have to. But yeah,
And
that
it'll
web
get hit even
oh,
harder. It's fine, you go.
Okay, I was gonna say that web will help out a lot because one big advantage that the Whimsicots did seem to draft around was definitely their speed tiers. You know, you see things like Hydreigon really commonly run with a Scarf. You see things like Whimsicott, Raichu-Alola, just crazy speed tiers across the board. And they're really gonna lose a lot of that pressure that they're gonna be looking for if they cannot get rid of that web.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing I see is that even with the speed tiers that the Whimsicots have on their side, what Oshawotts have is this really, potentially really good pivoting, especially with Volturn, Tornadus, Scizor, the Rotom. They can just kind of get the lead on Whimsicots by just getting momentum, getting good switch-ins, because they have some really decent Pokemon. I'm looking at like the Delphox, who doesn't want to switch in immediately, especially when there's a Hydreigon, when there is a Steelix right there. But getting in a free turn to just get off just a raw Fire Blast, that's not something the Whimsicots want to be taking. I also want to just point out the Raichu-Alola. I think that is probably like the queen on their chessboard. If he can secure, like, if he can get rid of that Gudra, if he can get rid of that milk drink, not the milk drink, the Miltank, he can kind of just sweep through his team after that. Oh, the Dug Trio too. I think actually, looking at it, the Dug Trio, Oshawotts have to really fear that Raichu-Alola. It can easily tear through the team if he's not careful. But the Dug Trio, for how fast his team is, the Dug Trio can still outspeed that Raichu-Alola and kill it with an Earthquake.
Absolutely. Overall, I do feel, although it is a pretty close game due to, the Oshawotts kind of have an inability to get rid of that Whimsicott, and that Whimsicott is what's going to be stopping the webs from coming out, I feel, mostly. But I do still feel overall that this game will go to the Whimsicots. Obviously, that Raichu-Alola is insanely threatening, especially when the Whimsicott is going to deny those webs from coming out in the first place. And it's just really hard for the Oshawotts team to deal with that kind of stuff. Although I will say, if they can take kind of a slow approach and they do manage to get the webs out, get through the Whimsicott, they do have a lot of defensive kind of pivot potential to get through the Whimsicott's tricky team.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think Whimsicots has probably the best chance at winning this. They just have a more consistent team. Oshawotts, like you said, just has good defensive pivots, but no real offensive presence. So I'm going to give it to the Whimsicots.
Alright, and with that, we will go on to our next match, which is the London Lycanroc versus the Vigrid Vespiquen.
Okay, so this would be the first match we played versus
absolutely.
London Lycanrocs. One thing that they struggled with was breaking through our Kyurem. And that's just because of the Ice Beam Earth Power coverage that he just cannot deal with. Looking at the Vigrid Vespiquen, I see right away there's an Amazon, which also brings in the ground and ice coverage. I expect that he's going to struggle to deal with that as well.
I do also see besides that Mammoth line, I do actually also see kind of a little bit of trouble getting through Chandelure, surprisingly. You'd think that with things like Incineroar being dark and da-da-da-da-da, Lycanroc, all of that, you'd think that Chandelure would have a really hard time, but Chandelure is very fast, it hits very hard. Unless you're running Scarfed Gardevoir, it's likely that it'll go first, it'll take out that Gardevoir. Even if you're running Scarfed Gardevoir, it can run Scarfed Chandelure, it's a very common set. And that can just really, other than Incineroar, get rid of your ways to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the Vigor Vesicles, they only have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4 physical attackers. And of the 4, the only one that doesn't fear this Mega Manectric Landorus sort of U-turning, Volt-turning, spammy Intimidate is probably the Mamoswine. As for the rest of them, they don't want to be taking those hits. They don't have very good recovery. They're kind of slow. Like when you have that Kartana, like Landorus doesn't want to be taking those hard hits, but it can easily just U-turn out on the Kartana switch, go into Manectric, and then Manectric can throw in and out with a Flamethrower. No one really wants to take that Flamethrower except for the Chandelure. The Chandelure doesn't potentially want to take a Volt Switch to the face because, like you said,
it's very frail.
Chandelure's frail, but Chandelure also want to take it because it wants as much health as it can because, like you said, I think it has probably the best chance of securing a win between either that or the Reuniclus. Strong special attackers seem to be the way to go against Lycanrocs when they have 3 Intimidate users.
100%. And speaking of these special attackers, the Vigrid Vespiquen do have, outside of using Reuniclus just as a special attacker, London Lycanroc, if Vigrid Vespiquen gets that Trick Room core they have hiding in the backup, the London Lycanroc is super screwed because a lot of their stuff is pretty fast, and even the stuff that they generally have that's on the slower side, they'd want, like for example Gardevoir, they'd probably want to give that something like a Scarf to deal with what the Vespiquens have. So if you play around the Vespiquens going fast and they set up Trick Room on you, you're in a really bad position.
Yeah, I agree. And looking at his team, he has a couple mons that can throw out a ton or just raw force out the Reuniclus or the Chandelure. Looking at Incineroar, Chandelure does not want to stay in against a potential knockoff or a potential Shadow Ball from Gardevoir. Reuniclus, same thing. But for the rest of the team, Reuniclus is actually bulky enough to take a hit from pretty much everyone else. Get out a Trick Room and then either retaliate with a strong, potentially Psychium or Titanium Z, or just switch out, pivot with Regenerator, and then come back later with another Trick Room. He can, if Ryan DCB plays properly, I think he can use Trick Room to really control how the London Lycanrocs play the game, and he can really use that as just a way to keep an iron grip on the momentum of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think I feel a lot more strongly in my conviction about this one. The last game was kind of like 50-50-ish, but I do really feel strongly about the Vigrid Vespiquens on this one. They have the ability to draft around either being faster or setting up Trick Room, and that versatility is really lethal in a mode where you do not know what your opponent's going to be bringing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they could either go for Trick Room, they could just go for raw, just full out offense. I'm not sure if the London Lycanrocs, no shade, but just I don't know if they'll be able to keep up with that, seeing from their past performances. That's all I have to say.
Right, we'll move on to the next match. We have the Krabby Club against the Cosmic Crobats. What do you have to say about this one?
Okay, looking at this at a glance, interestingly, okay, they have the Tapu Koko on the Krabby Club. Let's see, not many Pokemon to take advantage of that electric terrain. On the Cosmic Crobats, they have that Hail. Oh, they have a Hail core with the Sandslash Alola.
They do.
Oh, and the Abomasnow. That actually might be really threatening because looking at the Krabby Club, they don't really appreciate being spammed with Hail or with Ice Beams, all that stuff. Sandslash Alola could get up a Stealth Rock, Ninetales and Sandslash can both get up the Aurora Veil. and they are looking really good. Just having all those up give them a lot of freedom to just pretty much make their own choices. They don't really have to. They can disregard whatever Krabby Club can throw at them, having all that defensive pressure and offensive pressure up with the Rocks and Auroraville. With both of those up too, I'm not seeing any defog from Krabby Club except for the Lurantis. Like I said, there are a lot of really strong ice types here. Lurantis does not want to come out just a defog.
No.
It's going to die.
100%.
So, yeah, at first glance, Cosmic Crobat seems to have this really strong, what's the word, like, just this really strong presence immediately. They seem very threatening.
Yeah, however, I will say that if the Krabby Club does find a way to deny Cosmic Crobat setting up their core, obviously, a lot of the mons there, like Sand/Alola, they completely lose all of their value if the hail is not up. And if you manage to somehow deny that, obviously it's pretty hard with Mega Abomasnow having Snow Warning, but if you can get through that and then completely deny them any other opportunities to set it up, they do have really strong threats. They have things like Gallade Mega, they have Blaziken, they have Cobalion that absolutely decimate ice types when left unchecked, and that can really turn the game in their favor.
Yeah, exactly. The only ice type I see here who isn't too threatened by Cobalion is probably the Sandslash with the Slush Rush under Hail. It could hit it with an Earthquake, but Cobalion is pretty physically bulky. Cobalion might actually be able to take that Earthquake and retaliate with a close combat, and then you're done. Alola. Yeah. I also like this, the Mandibuzz having that Overcoat ability to not take damage from Hail. That might also give it that flying type, like you said, there's a Gallade and the Blaziken. Just having this strong flying type with really good defensive capabilities will give them a reliable switch into these two Pokemon.
So who do you feel will take this match? Because I feel this is another really close one.
I think I'm going to put my bet on the Cosmic Crobats.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with that. I do see a lot of potential for the Krabby Club to kind of maneuver their way through the Hail turns, but overall, drafting Abomasnow Mega makes it really safe to set up that condition, and there are quite a few mons, such as, you know, Sand/Alola, that really don't mind if they have to take a hit to get their job done. They probably can, as long as it's not obviously something like Cobalion, and overall that is just going to keep the tempo in their favor. They'll always keep their Hail up, their Aurora Veil, and they will just end up taking the game. So our next match, we have the Venezuelan Vaporeons against the mischievous Murkrows.
Okay, let's see. I actually am really liking both teams. They look very interesting. I'm a big fan of the mischievous Murkrows, Heatran, Zeraora, the Primeape, and the Diancie Mega picks. And on Venezuelan Vaporeons, I'm liking the Tapu Fini, the Volcarona. I'm a big fan of Volcarona. The Charizard X. Really, actually, everything here is really interesting.
A lot of these picks are definitely not particularly what you would expect from like if you told any random player, hey, what do you think about these? A lot of them would probably say, oh, you know, like I've never heard of half of these. But a lot of these really are, like, especially in the way they were all drafted together so smartly. They really do bring like a really, how do I even say this? They unite the team together well, despite being individually weak. They serve like a greater purpose.
Absolutely. Like, these seem like very informed picks. This feels like they're greater than the sum of their parts. Tapu Fini, I feel, with the Misty Terrain, will be able to dodge things like Toxics, Will-O-Wisps, and Thunder Waves from the likes of Ferrothorn, Sableye, Claydol, Golbat, all those. On the other hand, though, that Misty Terrain might bite him in the butt because he has a Snorlax who wants to set up. Normally, Snorlax runs the immunity so it doesn't get toxic, but Misty Terrain will do that job for him, and it'll also prevent any burns. Thinking about it too, Snorlax also runs Rest to get that somewhat reliable recovery. With the Misty Terrain ups, Snorlax cannot rest. So Venezuelan Vaporeons will have to use that Misty Terrain correctly and smartly in order to it's a powerful tool for them that they have to, like I said, use smartly if they want to win the game.
Absolutely. I do feel that the mischievous Murkrows generally will have a much easier time going offensive outside of their Mega. Obviously, Charizard Mega X will, at least in my current point of view, it will be carrying the Venezuelan Vaporeon's offense, and that can be a bit of a problem putting all of your tempo on one Mon, because if it gets checked, you can be left playing on the back foot.
Yeah, looking at the Charizard, it seems like his only reliable switch-in, the mischievous Murkrow's only reliable switch-in to that Charizard is the Gyarados with Intimidate. Charizard will just be able to Flare Blitz and Earthquake its way through his entire team. But the Venezuelan Vaporeons do have some answers for that Gyarados. Somewhat. They do have the Dhelmise, and they do have the Credilli, and the Gastrodon. The Dhelmise, however, has to be wary of any potential Z bounces. Same thing with the Credilli. And Gastrodon, I think, isn't the most reliable. It has to fish for Skull Burns if it wants to check that Gyarados.
And those Scald Burns can definitely end up, if you switched in Tapu Fini recently, that can definitely end up no longer being reliable.
So, if the mischievous Murkrows are able to play around that Tapu Fini, assuming it shows up, it just comes down to like who is able to play around it or not. Whoever is able to take advantage of it and play around any disadvantages it might bring. Also, looking at any hazards, it seems like the Venezuelan Vaporeons have quite a lot of, like they have Tentacle over Toxic Spikes, they have Gastrodon, Credilli for their Stealth Rocks. They also have pretty reliable Rapid Spin and Defog and Skuntank, Rotom Heat, and Dhelmise. That'll come in really handy for Charizard and Volcarona, who absolutely despise Stealth Rocks. Mischievous Murkrows really only have the Heatran and the Ferrothorn to set up rocks. I feel like he won't want to waste rocks on Dancing Mega just because of how powerful and it is. This ability to come in and get off a fast Diamond Storm on Charizard Mega might just prove very invaluable to preventing the game getting out of control and preventing that Charizard from getting too much momentum.
Absolutely, and I will say, or I will add rather, that a lot of the stuff the Mischievous Murkrows has to set up hazards, they are very threatened by the Venezuelan Vaporeon's team, bluntly speaking. You know, you send in something like Ferrothorn when they have Rotom Heat and Volcarona and Charizard Mega as potential things. You really don't want to be leaving Ferrothorn in for long. So if they ever have any of those fires out, you know, you can't stay in to put up that hazard or you will get one shot. And Heatran too with Tapu Fini, you know, you are really risking taking a huge amount of damage just for one hazard.
I also do like, again, this kind of, sort of, with Rotom Heat and Passimian, they have this sort of like Volturn core. Just the two of them, although, but Passimian has some really decent coverage. It gets, I believe it gets Poison Jab, and it also should get Rock coverage, I believe in Rock Slide. Having the Poison Jab will let it deal with that Dancing Mega way more reliably than with a close combat that might not even KO it. But that's also assuming that it outspeeds that Dancing Mega. It would have to run a Choice Scarf. But I think the Choice Scarf would probably be the best choice on a Passimian, just to be able to outspeed, again, that Diancie and also the Zero Aura. Zero Aura is pretty frail, but I don't think the Zero Aura, looking at it, the Zero Aura probably isn't necessary. The only Electric-type moves that it would be able to absorb are coming off of the Rotom Heat. Speaking of the Rotom Heat, with Heatran and Zero Aura, Rotom Heat, you know, there's the Flash Fire and the Volt Absorb. It'll be very easy for the Mischievous Murkrows to play around that potential Rotom Heat, who could actually put a really big dent in. You see the Sableye, the Ferrothorn, Claydol, none of those want to take potentially a Firium Z attack. That would hurt them and put a big dent in them, especially Claydol, who might be your first choice to take, you know, a fire type attack, but it doesn't have any reliable recovery. Finally, I'd also like to say that on paper, it seems like the Heatran and the Diancie and whoever are going to be able to check that Volcarona. Like you said, the Pokemon who are going to be setting up with Stealth Rocks and whatever for Mischievous Murkrows, they don't want to be in against those fire types.
No, not at all.
And the best part about them, Rotom can get momentum, Charizard can set up Dragon Dance, and Volcarona can set up the Quiver Dance.
So even if you switch out of these unfavorable situations, you are still getting punished.
Exactly. And if the Mischievous Murkrows aren't aware of any potential coverage that Volcarona could run, for example, I think it would be absolutely invaluable for Volcarona to run the HP Ground here to cover the Heatran, the Diancie, and any possible revenge killing from the Zero Aura. Charizard, it's like exactly what I said with Charizard Mega. You just run the fire ground coverage and there really isn't much that can be done.
I'm going to have to say, I feel pretty, although I did say earlier that the Venezuelan Vaporeons do have to rely on Charizard Mega for their offense, I do feel that this game is quite in their favor. Like Parm mentioned earlier, the Gyarados is really the check that they're going to be looking for. And the Venezuelan Vaporeons have a lot of safe options against Gyarados. No, they can't particularly just one-shot it, but they can more than likely force it to switch, either through sheer bulk, resistances, you know, you're going for water perhaps, Gastrodon on a Storm Drain, all of that stuff can just make it not pleasant to stay in. But Mischievous Murkrows does have the potential of, you know, maybe you're going to set up screens with Claydol and then you expect them to switch and you can set up Dragon Dances on Gyarados or something like that, and that could really turn the tides.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very skill-based matchup. So it just kind of comes down, I don't have a specific preference. I don't think one team is better than the other. It just comes down to who's a better player.
Absolutely. I do feel that this is so far the closest game. And next up we have the Garreg-Mach Garchomps against the Windsor Wurmples.
Okay. Right away, the Windsor Wurmples team is looking a bit weak. Looking at the Garreg-Mach Garchomps, on the other hand, they have a very well-rounded team, actually. They have really strong physical and special threats in the Garchomp, and the Tapu Bulu, and in the Alakazam.
And as we saw earlier, that Oricorio can do very unexpected things.
Yeah, absolutely. Having access to 4 different typings, the Fire, Electric, the Ghost, the Psychic, gives you plenty of coverage and flexibility against certain teams. On the other hand, the Windsor Wurmples, they have the Budget Mammoth and the Pilot's line. The Hiligo is somewhat flexible. Same thing with Scizor, being able to run defensive and offensive, or even just kind of in between sets. Sharpedo can also run some different coverage with Waterfall Crunch, Psychic Fangs, Ice Fangs. But I don't think the Garreg-Mach Garchomps just have this really gorgeous core of the Empoleon, the Blissey, the Spiritomb, and the Toxicroak that just seems to be able, on paper, to handle really any threat. The Latios, for example, just can't touch the Empoleon or the Diancie or the Blissey unless it has Earthquake, but Earthquake also can't touch the Blissey. Blissey gets off the Toxic and then starts Hyacinth Tossing and Soft Boiling. Really, everything on the Windsor Wurmples doesn't seem like it's a threat, like something that you have to prepare for. The scariest thing I see here is probably that Sharpedo, just because of how flexible it is and because of just how much raw power it has. But not having access to that speed boost, just because of how the rules are with this tournament, my apologies, that's really going to set him back.
Yeah, I do think it's not that the Windsor Wurmples drafted bad in any way, because they obviously have a very good, like just running through your team even at a glance, you can see so quickly how much priority they put on drafting defense. Like if you are a team that really relied on going all in and just wiping over your opponent, you would probably lose to the Windsor Wurmples just because of the sheer amount of defensive options they have. But the Garreg-Mach Garchomps drafted in a way that gives them enough flexibility to match alongside offensive options, and that is really, I feel, going to put the nail in the coffin for the Windsor Wurmples. So I do think Garreg-Mach Garchomps will win this game.
I have to agree with you. They just don't looking at it, it doesn't seem like they stand much of a chance. The Garamond Gontran seems to have just a better hand here.
And on to our next match, which is the Staggering Star Raptors against the Muslim Mewtwo's. And I do have to say, right off the bat, when I was putting together this little part where you can see the teams on the slides, I do have to say, when I was looking at Side Race's team, I hope that's how you pronounce it. I don't know what it is about it, but his team draft, I'm just honestly kind of in love with it. I don't know, it feels like earlier we were talking about being greater than the sum of your parts. And I feel like that ideology really shines through with Side Race's team. Like a lot of the stuff here, nobody would even consider picking, but together it poses a really big challenge for the Muslim Mewtwo's.
I'm honestly a bit jealous. Like, looking at it, he has really good pivots with the Rotom Wash, the Tangrowth. He has potentially even a Trick Room. Let's see, with the Mimikyu can set a Trick Room, then the camera can just get off these really powerful Fire Blasts and Earth powers. Dragonite gives this really threatening late game cleanup with Dragon Dance and Extreme Speed.
And but even that multi-scale, if you send out Cryogonal, you say, okay, this is my Ice Check for your Dragonite, that multi-scale will more than likely stop it from being one-shot, and that can really, really screw with your plans.
Yeah, looking at the Muslim Mewtwo's, I also do actually like their roster.
Absolutely.
I think both teams here have very
amazing
great
drafts.
Rosters.
Amazing drafts.
Yeah. Very just flexible, well balanced, not leaning towards offense or defense too much. I like the Clefable in the Magnezone. He does lack a Dragon type, and I feel like that would make a really good Steel, Fairy, and Dragon Core, but that's fine. Looking at it, that Clefable seems to be a little bit of a check-all. Clefable does struggle a bit with being hit by physical attacks. I'm looking especially at that Barbarical and at that Dragonite, who could potentially run the Flying Z and just put a massive hole in the Clefable. And then, like you said, with the multi-scale, this is what sets it apart from other Dragon types. The multi-scale prevents it from being revenge killed if you play the Dragonite smartly and don't send it out when there are rocks up.
Absolutely. Overall, I do feel that this is, again, a really even game. I feel like this is the first one where I'm having a huge struggle even naming one, because I feel like I'll regret saying it as soon as I do. Both of these teams, both of them have drafted in a way that there's no glaring weakness for either team to really take massive advantage of. It is absolutely going to come down to what they pick to bring, honestly. There is no way for me to say who's going to bring what, and honestly, without seeing the exact 6-on-6, I don't think I can make a call on this one.
Me neither. If I do have to say just one last thing, looking at their win cons, I think Staggering Star Raptors definitely has to put their money in that Dragonite or potentially a more invested but maybe more consistent Mimikyu, Trick Room, and Cameron Mega. On the other hand, the Muslim Mewtwo's do have the Tornadus and the Thundurus who can set up. I believe Tornadus is more reliable with like some sort of band or life whip set, but Thundurus can run the Nasty Plot with Titanium Z and just stab. Really, the Metagenic Mega will kind of just blow holes through the entire team. Nothing wants to switch in versus higher jump kicks or Zen Headbutts.
This is true, there is no Psychic typing. He will be entirely relying on that Mimikyu to check that Metacham.
Yeah, and they also lack a Dark type, unless I'm like blind. No, they don't have a Dark type. So just spamming that Zen Headbutt will actually get him a lot of mileage, especially since the Staggering Star Raptors don't have much recovery. His best bet is to use a defensive Tangrowth, maybe with Rocky Helmet, and just switch it in against those attacks.
No, yeah, after that Mega Metacham part, I am actually going to say I think I did not realize that they lacked a Dark type as well. I don't know how I missed that. That is pretty big for when your opponent is running something that really wants to be pressing Psychic buttons. So I do think I'm actually going to shift over a bit in favor to the Muslim Mewtwo's for this one.
I'm just going to say that either side, it's another skill-based one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we will go on to our next match, which is the Philadelphia Flareons against the Charming Chandelures. And obviously, we have looked quite a bit into this one because it is our next match, so hopefully we can offer some good insight here.
Yeah, don't want to spoil too much about our game plan. I will say right away that we are a bit. Oh, before I get to that, looking at the matches that Philadelphia Flames have played, I do respect the way he just the kind of player he is. He's not afraid to like try different sets. He tried this crazy Flareon set. I think I like substitute and hidden power like electric or something. It was really crazy. I think he was going against what was that team that the Gyarados? The mischievous Murkrows or something.
Yeah, I think they had the Gyarados.
Yeah, he was kind of crazy, but honestly, I respect it. And that's something that we kind of have to, like I said, respect. We had to be, I think for the first time, I'm feeling a bit threatened. I'm not sure what he's going to pull out. And I think, while I do feel threatened, that's kind of the wonder of Draft League. You don't really know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And I do feel that unpredictability will be a huge edge for Jaden, and not just in this match, but in pretty much any match he ever plays for the rest of history. Being unpredictable like that, as you could see in a couple of the other matches, there were win cons that were straight up countered by the other team's draft. Whereas if you really look at Jaden's team, there were a lot of things, obviously, as Parm mentioned, the crazy Flareon set. I literally cannot even speak of what else he could do because I don't know that it exists yet. He will probably be in the lab like some crazy man, bringing something that will completely destroy my morale, and I'm frankly terrified of it.
Like, and when you look at his teams, these are Pokemon that are pretty one-dimensional. Blastoise has one set, Hippowdon has one set, Necrozma has one set, Sigilyph has one set, Scolipede has one set. Obviously, they might have some variation and some flexibility depending on the matchup, but these are Pokemon that are fairly one-dimensional, but somehow Jaden's M26 has been able to really use them to their full potential and get the most mileage out of them. So we're really on our toes wondering, like, you know, even though we're worried, I do have faith that, personally, I think that we're very conservative players. We try to go for the middle ground plays. We try to just make sure that we cut our losses.
Most of the time. Let's calm down. Sometimes we do some questionable things.
Sometimes, but we try to avoid that. So I think just that kind of dynamic will allow us to just keep up with his really surprising playstyle, especially since we have some very reliable pivots in the Xatu, Bronzong, and Aromatisse. Like that's a lot of immunities. The Levitate and the Steel typing on Bronzong, the Flying type on Xatu, and the Magic Bounce on Xatu, and the Fairy typing on Aromatisse. That should give us a lot of leeway when we try to scout and just try to figure out, you know, what Jaden's M26 is bringing to the table.
Overall, you can call it egotistical of me if you wish, but I refuse to bet against myself, and I will continue to have the utmost confidence in me and Parm's gameplay. So despite Jaden's extremely scary team that will have us testing things in the lab for an ungodly amount of time, I will continue to have faith in us, and I will say that we will win this.
And I have to agree, you know? I have to have faith in myself. So Charmander and Delirious are gonna take this.
Hopefully.
100%.
I like the confidence. Our next match is the Honorable Houndoons against the Ace Alolan Ninetales.
Okay, so this is decent drafts. Not as good as the ones we saw previously, but I mean, we're just looking at things like Charizard, we're looking at things like Talonflame, Kyurem Black, which have these glaring Stealth Rock weaknesses. That's not very good to have in draft.
Especially if you're not really running a team that can reliably defog. You know, you can bring Talonflame for defog, but you generally want to be running Talonflame as this all-out attacker. So especially if your only defogger is 4 times weak to rocks in the first place, when you switch it in, like, the rocks have done their job by that point. They've destroyed something.
With that being said, Rotom and Klefki actually did get defogged. Klefki just got defogged this generation.
Oh, did he? Oh god, I feel like a moron now.
However, Rotom probably won't want to run the defog.
No.
He'll probably want to run the Choice Scarf because there is a Garchomp and a Kyurem Black who those are contenders for Z moves. The Garchomp wants to run the Rockian Z or the Dragonian Z. Kieran Black wants to run the Icean Z, and that's really stiff competition for if you want to run a Bloom Doom, which could just get eaten up by the Drampa, by the Houndoom, by actually, why not be awful? But I think it would probably be more worth it for Sword of Strife to put the Ice and Z on the Kieran Block. Just having that super powerful 200 base power Sub-Zero Slammer to just slam anything that switches in or is already in. He just has to be careful with the Talonflame and the Charizard. Again, they kind of fill similar roles. They're kind of just trying to get off strong attacks. Talonflame has a priority. Charizard doesn't have the priority, but potentially can hit a bit harder and more consistently without the recoil. But looking at the Honorable Houndooms, I'm not actually seeing any reason to bring a Fire type or even a Flying type. He has the really strong Suicune and Gigalith and the Flash Fire on pre-Mega Evolved Houndoom to pivot into those Fire type attacks. He has to be really careful, Sword of Strife, about those attacks.
Absolutely. Overall, I do still feel if you have a way to deal with Klefki and then you get out those rocks, Talonflame never wants to be switching into that, so I do feel kind of inclined to say if Fencer can get out those rocks, you know, it is really bad for Alolan Ninetales, especially when he has, you know, a lot of his threats outside of that Talonflame. You know, you have, obviously you do have Kieran Black, who only takes neutral damage from an Ice Beam, but you have, you know, Garchomp is 4 times weak, Rotom-Mow 2 times weak, Golem is weak, and there's just a lot of that Suicune, especially on a Mon that can run things like Calm Mind. You don't want to be super weak to a prominent sweeper.
Agreed. With that being said, Gardevoir Mega, I think, is going to be a Mon that's going to run the Alolan Ninetales a lot of mileage, having those super powerful pixelated boosted Hyper Voices. Those will prevent Suicune from getting off any potential substitutes. And just don't underestimate the power that Gardevoir Mega has. That thing will prevent things like the Porygon, the Suicune, the Mew from like stalling out, you know, using Recover, Soft Boiled, or whatever. Like Gardevoir Mega is probably going to be doing 60-70% of these Pokemon. They don't want to they can't switch in. He has to sack something and then revenge kill. Probably with a Sakataka, probably with a Scarf Crocodile, probably with Houndoom Mega with what's it called, Sludge Bomb. It's a Sword of Strife. If he plays with that Gardevoir Mega, I think he will be able. Looking at his team, like there's really nothing that Gardevoir Mega doesn't fear, except for maybe the Sakataka. Like that Gardevoir Mega is pretty much going to win the game just by existing, just on like Team Select. And he has, the Sword of Strife has a lot of ways to protect it. Like I said, the Sakataka is probably the only threat to Gardevoir Mega, and then second to that, Houndoom and Crocodile, maybe, possibly the Hitmonlee. I'm not too sure what moves it gets. I don't use Hitmonlee. Like I said, Gardevoir Mega, there are some Pokemon here in the roster that can protect it. Namely, I'm looking at that Klefki, that Metagross. Klefki can get off Thunder Waves against Houndoom Mega and prevent, you can get off a Thunder Wave against it and prevent it from reaching that speed tier that will be able to revenge kill the Gardevoir Mega, sorry. Talonflame and Charizard, for how weak they are, just because of self weaknesses, those Fire type attacks are something that the Pokemon that want to switch into those Fire type attacks, Suicune, Gigalith, don't really want to be taking damage, especially Gigalith. Suicune really only has leftovers. Gigalith only has leftovers, but it may also want to run Sugar Berry or something. I just think the Honorable Houndooms cannot keep up with the offense that the Alolan Ninetales have. So I'm going to put my bets on the Alolan Ninetales.
That is fair enough. And with that, we are done the first week of, or not the first week, sorry, our first week of Pickems, being week 3. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed our little thought process. We're sorry for talking a lot. It's just what we do. It will never change.
That's kind of the point, you know. We're discussing what's gonna, you know, what's gonna go down. But I mean, I guess we gotta just close it out.
Yeah. So thank you guys for sitting through our little monologues. I hope you guys enjoyed our insights again. And yeah, until next time, my god, what an awful way to end it. Thank you guys for watching us.
Good luck, everyone. See you.
See ya.